Decoupling is a phenomenon by which large established companies, what we call incumbents, they lose activities in the customer value chain to startups. First, the entrepreneurs should map out the customer value chain. So map out all the activities that customers do in order to acquire, use, and then dispose of products and services. So once you map out these activities, then you need to get a sense of which activities are customers unsatisfied with. What I call the weak links, those activities that consistently customers are unsatisfied with. So the entrepreneurs should find ways that identify activities that customers are unsatisfied, weak links, and then figure out ways to make it cheaper, faster, or easier to do those activities. And if they find a way to do that, they'll start stealing that activity away from established companies.
여러분 안녕하세요. 테크 저널리스트 김희순입니다. 제가 오늘 티타임즈 첫 출연인데요. 첫 출연이라 참 무척 설렙니다. 20년간 제가 테크 분야 기자를 하면서 가장 많이 썼던 단어 중에 하나가 바로 혁신이라는 용어였습니다. 시장을 바꾼 기업들은 어떻게 혁신을 했을까요? 오늘 이 혁신의 비밀을 파헤쳐 주실 분을 모셨습니다. 디커플링의 저자 탈레스 테이셰이라 교수님을 모셨습니다. 안녕하세요, 교수님. 자기소개 부탁드립니다.
Hello, my name is Thales Teixeira. I am the co-founder of decoupling.co, a digital agency that does consulting for businesses that want to do business model innovation and transformation. I'm a professor at the University of California, and I used to be a professor at the Harvard Business School for 10 years. This is my first time in Korea, and I've had nothing but the best expectations. The companies here are highly innovative. I was able to meet founders of startups, small and medium-sized businesses, and large conglomerates, and they're all very innovative and interesting businesses.
한국에 방문하신 목적에 대해서 설명을 해주시죠.
Well, the purpose is twofold. So first, I wanted to learn about what the Korean companies are doing. What is the industry structure? What are the new innovation that is coming out of Korea that is very specific to the country? And then the other purpose is really to educate. I've done research for more than 10 years on business model innovation and transformation, and I wanted to come here and share what I have learned. Even after I wrote my book in 2019, I've learned more things and I wanted to come here, so I gave lectures, workshops, and I talked one-to-one with business leaders.
교수님은 디커플링 이론으로 아주 유명한데요. 시장의 파괴를 불러온 기업들의 공통적인 특성을 디커플링으로 정의하셨습니다. 그럼 디커플링이 뭔지 직접 설명을 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
So decoupling is a phenomenon by which large established companies, what we call incumbents, they lose activities in the customer value chain to startups. So to give you one example, a customer value chain could be to go to a bank, open a checking account, then open a savings account, and then get a mortgage for a house, and then get a credit card, and pay bills, and transfer money online, and a bunch of other activities that consumers need to do. This is the value chain of consumers. Traditionally, big banks do all these activities, right? And so as a consumer, you would choose a bank, and you often do most of these activities with the bank. In the last 10 years, what has happened is this rise of fintech startups, and each startup tends to look at one activity that the bank is not doing well and decide they're going to try to do that activity and steal customers from those banks. Steal. Yeah. And so, for example, banks take a while to give out credit cards. You have to fill out an application, and then they will evaluate, and 5 to 10 days later, they send you a credit card by mail. Yeah. Online banks called neobanks decided to shorten this period. So you fill out the information online, you don't need to go to a bank branch, and then in 90 seconds, they will tell you whether you're approved or not. If you're approved, they'll give you a credit card number so you can use in your e-commerce purchases, and then a few days later, they send you a credit card. Oh. Right? So these neobanks started decoupling by taking away that activity of offering credit cards. And then other startups started taking away the activity of online payments. and then checking accounts, and then savings accounts, and investment portfolio. So startups have been decoupling the activities that were all together offered by one established company, in this case a big bank.
교수님께서 이렇게 시장의 파괴는 고객의 가치 사슬의 중간을 뚫고 들어가는 스타트업들이 고객을 뺏어오면서 나온다고 말씀을 해주셨는데요. 그러면 디커플링을 실제로 수행해 업계 판도를 바꾼 기업들, 조금 전에 은행의 사례를 설명해 주셨는데 조금 다른 사례가 있으면 설명을 부탁드리겠습니다.
Well, obviously, we as consumers know many examples of disruptive startups. Consumers don't know that decoupling is happening,
Yeah.
but what I did was actually explain the phenomenon, right? But when we arrive in an airport, so in South Korea, when I arrived, and I decided to pull up an app and order a car service from Kakao Taxi.
Oh, you use Kakao Taxi.
I used Kakao when I arrived here, and Tada as well. These companies were decoupling the traditional taxi industry,
Yeah,
right? By offering just to connect people to cars, the process of connection. They didn't buy cars and maintain cars and hire drivers and do all of these things. They just created apps that allow the connection between drivers and riders, or taxis and riders. And so this is an example of decoupling. Another example that I really like are insurance companies.
Insurance?
Yes, young people don't like to go to an insurance broker and see all the options of insurance. So they use apps to compare between insurance companies. So there's a lot of startups out there, they don't offer the insurance, they just facilitate comparison. So that activity early on in the customer value chain of comparing and choosing is done by a startup.
이렇게 지금 방금 카카오 택시 이용한 것도 디커플링의 한 예로 설명을 해주셨는데요. 이렇게 들으니까 머리에 정말 쏙쏙 들어오는 것 같습니다. 비즈니스 모델을 혁신해서 고객이 편한 방법으로, 고객의 주도형으로 바꿨다고 설명을 해주셨는데요. 지난 3년간 코로나 팬데믹을 겪으면서 사실 고객의 요구도 많이 달라졌습니다. 교수님이 보시기에 이 시기를 겪으면서 디커플링에 성공하고 고객과 커플링한 기업은 어디가 있을지 좀 설명해 주시면 좋겠는데요.
Well, obviously you and I remember the period of the pandemic in which everybody was at home. So we needed products to be delivered to our homes. We needed food, we need medication, we needed cleaning supplies, all of these things. And so before that, we would go to a store, we go visit a store, and then we buy products from a retailer. Well, you know, the need to stay at home made it possible, all of these delivery services.
Yeah.
They're not the retailer, they just deliver products. So that activity of delivery was done by them. So there must be lots of delivery services here in South Korea. And so that was a phenomenon rise that happened during the pandemic. Another one was streaming. So we have Netflix in the US, and I've been using Netflix as well in South Korea, right? And Netflix is a true example of decoupling because you don't need to go rent a movie. You don't need to go get any media. You can just stream it directly from them, and they offer the ability to get the content and stream it to you. Video games, another example of phenomenon rise of equivalent of streaming video games that you don't have to buy anymore, the video game. You can just stream it. And in some cases, you can do it for free.
지금 이 영상을 보고 계신 많은 분들, 그리고 기업, 스타트업. 그러면 우리는 어떻게 이제 디커플링을 해야 할까 제일 궁금해 하실 것 같습니다. 교수님, 그러면 디커플링을 하려면 기업들 지금 당장 무엇을 시작해야 될까요?
That's a great question. The way I teach when I do workshops for companies or for startups, or even in my courses at the University of California or when I used to teach at Harvard, is first, the entrepreneurs should map out the customer value chain, right? So map out all the activities that customers do in order to acquire, use, and then dispose of products and services. So once you map out these activities, then you need to get a sense of which activities are customers unsatisfied with. What I call the weak links, right? Those activities that consistently customers are unsatisfied with, right? And so once you identify that, and you can do that identifying that in a very rigorous fashion by doing surveys or in an informal way, which many entrepreneurs in the United States and here do. They, as consumers, they are unhappy with some activity because it's either too expensive, it is too slow, like the case of the credit card that I told you, or it is too complicated, right? So imagine if I go to many cities when I travel. In each city I have to look up hotel, is it available, what's the price, where's the location, and for each one I have to fill out my personal information, fill out my payment, and then book a hotel room. That's very complicated. So I use something called hotels.com. Once I fill out once, then I can just go, oh, I'm going to be in Seoul for a few days, click, reserve, click another city, reserve. So that was an example of decoupling in which it became simpler, right? So the entrepreneurs should find ways that identify activities that customers are unsatisfied, weak links, and then figure out ways to make it cheaper, faster, or easier to do those activities. And if they find a way to do that, they'll start stealing that activity away from established companies.
고객이 아주 불편해하는 그 링크를 잡아내는 작업을 빨리 시작하시라는 조언을 들었습니다. 이 새로운 기업들이 이렇게 디커플링을 통해서 시장을 변화시키고 있는데 그럼 기존 기업들은 어떻게 해야 될까요? 기존의 기업들 중에 디커플링을 방어한 기업이 어디가 있는지 되게 궁금한데요.
So first, the established companies should also map out their customers' value chain and make sure they identify the weak links, right? I often help companies. This is when I'm invited into a company, this is the first thing I do with my team. Map out the customer value chain, and I use the tools that we've developed to do surveys to measure satisfaction or NPS across each point of the customer value chain. We identify the weak links and we help the company correct it. And we say, you need to correct this because customers are unsatisfied. And if you leave that too long without being improved, chances are a startup will come and steal that activity.
Yeah.
So that's the first defensive mechanism.
Yeah.
Identify and correct, right? Now, what do most companies often do when a startup comes and decouples? So going back to the credit card.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing that I always observe them doing is they try to copy the startup. So let's create our own digital credit card and let's launch it and let's make it fast and emulate the disruptor. That often doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because if you are that early disruptor credit card company that did all of these new innovations, now you have traction in the market and you're growing. And you're getting millions and millions of customers. And then when the bank comes and says, well, we're going to do it as well, the bank is already behind. And the bank doesn't offer anything differentiated. It just offers what we call a Me Too product.
Me too.
Me Too. And Me Too, customers were unhappy. They left. They're not coming back. And so if you just copy, it often doesn't work because you're not offering something much better to the consumer. Right? What you should do as a business, and going to your question of is there a successful case of responding, what I advocate is basically you need to rebalance your business model. You need to figure out what activities have you lost, and you need to figure out either how to regain them in a different manner or how to adapt your business to succeed and thrive with the loss of that activity. So to give an example, in my book, chapter 1, I talk about an electronics retailer called Best Buy in the United States. Here, it would be equivalent to Lotte Hi-Mart.
Yeah.
So and what do people do? They go to the store, ask advice on salespeople, look at all the TVs, and then they pull out their phone and they see if Coupon offers cheaper.
Yeah, right.
Right? But Coupon doesn't have the cost of the store, the salespeople, the inventory. So Coupon can offer it cheaper, and oftentimes the store doesn't get the sale.
Yep.
So what did Best Buy decide to do? Best Buy realized that when consumers went to the store, if they buy electronics in Best Buy or they bought it on Amazon, for example, the electronics manufacturer would always win. They were always selling products. So Best Buy adapted its business model to start charging the manufacturers of electronics for the products that they put on the store. Because then, whether people buy it on Amazon or in the store, Best Buy was always making money. It's called slotting fees. So they started charging for the placement of the electronics in the store, and that was a successful response to decoupling, in which case this was Amazon decoupling one, so it's a formidable opponent. That's one of the most successful cases that I provide in my book.
지난해부터 생성 AI가 화두로 떠올랐는데요. 이 분야에 이미 유니콘이 14개나 생겼는데요. 이런 기업에도 디커플링을 대입해 볼 수 있는지 궁금한데요.
Absolutely. So first, I agree with you. Generative AI is a very disruptive and powerful new technology, very innovative. The most used now, well known, is ChatGPT. It was created by OpenAI, and part of the reason it's been successful is it's extremely simple to use and it provides value instantaneously. So it grants access. The reason it's successful is because it gives access. So many people, you go there, use it for free, or you pay, use a premium version, and you can ask all sorts of questions, including, more recently, I went to ChatGPT and I started asking ChatGPT, who's Talis Teixeira? And they gave me a bio. So when companies here asked for my bio, I visited many companies here in South Korea. I just went to ChatGPT, asked for it to describe who Talis Teixeira is, and I copied and pasted and sent it to the Korean company.
Yeah, even in Korean.
Even in Korean.
Yeah.
And then in one of the bios it says, well, Talis Teixeira wrote a book called Decoupling. And then I asked ChatGPT, can you summarize the book for me? And then it summarized the book, and it talked about the concept of decoupling. And I said, oh, let me ask if ChatGPT can give me examples of decoupling. Give me examples of decoupling, and it gave me. And I said, give me a new example of a new startup in the transportation industry. And then it told me, using decoupling, a new example of decoupling transportation. And then I asked, well, what if I want to create a pitch for a startup? Can you give me the slides to describe this new business? And can you give me a name for it? And ChatGPT started to answer and so on and so forth, right? And I even asked ChatGPT, can you estimate the market size for it? All of these things. So the point is remarkable new technology, right? Now, can you use decoupling with ChatGPT? Of course you can. They created the technology, you can create use cases for the technology, and that's what many companies are doing. Some are saying, we're going to create our own. Alphabet is decided to create their own generative AI tool using large language models. But some companies are just saying, well, let's create a layer on top of it such that we use the underlying functionalities of ChatGPT, but we offer added services. Right? So for example, in tourism, you could start asking tool to plan all of your travels, and it uses ChatGPT underlying as the intelligence mechanism, but it interprets and adds more elements to it. So you're separating what is the underlying engine of knowledge to how are you delivering the information to the consumers with additional features and benefits, right? So that's a clear example of how you can use it. And I think we will see many, many more examples of companies that are just layers on top of ChatGPT and other large language models.
마지막으로 우리 독자분들께 한국에 오셔서 인상 깊었던 이야기를 부탁드리고 마무리하도록 하겠습니다.
What I've been most impressed in my week here in South Korea is the drive of the population. The people here are extremely, extremely well educated. They have such a drive, and innovation is everywhere. Like everywhere in the streets, young people, older people, all of these new products and services that I don't see in many other countries that I visited, I've been seeing here in Korea. So it has such a good balance of innovation and respect for the culture, investment in people, and investment in technology. And I feel that the combination of these elements make South Korea poised to be a true leader in the global economy in business and in politics and in culture for the next few decades.
Thank you so much. 오늘 테이셰이라 교수님 모시고 시장을 점령한 기업들의 전략인 디커플링에 대해서 살펴봤습니다. 여러분도 탐색하고 구입하고 사용하는 소비 단계를 분리하는 활동을 통해서 제2의 우버 그리고 제2의 넷플릭스, 에어비앤비가 될 수 있습니다. 재빨리 고객의 불편한 소비 단계를 낚아채서 빠른 속도로 시장을 장악하시기 바랍니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.